Hello students, it's Sam Bennett, your guide to critical thinking, and this is another short video on a key concept. So in this video, I'm going to discuss the construction or the creation of modus ponens and modus tollens style arguments. In other words, constructing an argument that follows the pattern of modus ponens and modus tollens. The reason we are going to do this, the reason why we are going to go over construction is because knowing a little bit about construction will actually help you identify whether a given argument that you're looking at is modus ponens or modus tollens. All right, so let's dive in. So first we're going to construct a modus ponens style argument. All right, so here are the steps. Okay, step one, create an if-then statement. In other words, generate a conditional statement. Step two, identify the antecedent in the conditional that you just created. Step three, affirm or repeat that antecedent, and then just put it together and draw the conclusion. All right, I'll do an example, a couple examples. Okay, here's the first one. Let's just, create an if-then statement, whatever you want. If I go for a walk, then I will feel refreshed. All right, now what's the antecedent in what we just said? Well, the antecedent is always going to be whatever comes after if. All right, so what came after if? I go for a walk. So that's our antecedent. I go for a walk is our antecedent. All right, now we are going to affirm or repeat it, roughly speaking. To repeat it, we just say, I went for a walk. We put it in the past tense because it'll make it sound smoother when we put it together. And now let's do step four. Let's put it all together. If I go for a walk, then I will feel refreshed. I went for a walk, therefore I feel refreshed. Okay, so again, we create an if-then, we identify the antecedent, and then we affirm the antecedent. Affirming the antecedent, that's modus ponens. All right, let's do another one. I run around the block if I am depressed. That's the if-then statement I've created. I run around the block if I am depressed. All right, well, what's the antecedent in that? The antecedent is I am depressed. Why? Because that is what comes after if. I am depressed comes after if, so I am depressed is the antecedent. Great. Step three, affirm or repeat that antecedent. Okay, I'm depressed. All right, so now let's just put it all together and draw the conclusion. I run around the block if I'm depressed. I am depressed, therefore I will run around the block. All right, so we've created a second modus ponens style argument. Let's keep going. Now we're going to construct an argument with modus tollens. All right, so how do you do that? Well, first you create an if-then statement. All right, step two, identify the consequent in the statement you just created. And then I want you to deny or reject that consequent. And then just kind of throw it all together and draw the conclusion. All right, let's look at two examples. Step one, we got to create an if-then statement. All right, so I'm just coming up with stuff off the top of my head, right? If I lie to others, then I feel guilty. All right, so what is the consequent in the statement I just created? I feel guilty. Why is that the consequent? Because it comes after then. Then I feel guilty. Okay, so I feel guilty is the consequent. All right, step three, deny that consequent. Reject it. All right, I don't feel guilty. All right, now I just have to put it together. If I lie to others, then I feel guilty. I don't feel guilty, therefore I didn't lie to others. Good. Let's do one more. Again, we're constructing a modus tollens style argument. So we're going to create an if-then. If I walk in the valley of death, then I won't be afraid. What's the consequent? I won't be afraid. Okay, now we're going to deny or reject that consequent. In this case, that becomes I am afraid. Okay, so let's put it all together. This one's kind of funny, but still works. If I walk in the valley of death, then I won't be afraid. I am afraid, therefore I didn't walk in the valley of death. So that's a modus tollens, right? Now remember, modus tollens, that's legal, it's allowed, it creates valid arguments. That's why it has a weird Latin title, modus tollens. Wow. Modus tollens, we give a Latin name to to a valid argument structure. Modus tollens, modus ponens, both weird Latin phrases, and both of them create valid arguments. Modus tollens has the pattern DC, denying the consequent. DC is allowed. Modus ponens has the pattern of AA, affirming the antecedent. AA, DC. Those are the only acceptable patterns. Only those patterns will create valid arguments if we're talking about if-then statements. All right. Let's analyze this argument. Let's see. Now that we've practiced how to construct modus ponens, modus tollens style arguments, maybe we'll be better at identifying them. Okay. So let's look at this argument. If the book is due today, then it must be returned to the library. The book need not be returned to the library. Therefore, it is not due today. Okay. So step one is identify the antecedent and consequent. All right. Well. I look for the conditional. Okay, I see the conditional. It's the first sentence. All right. Now, what's the antecedent? Well, the antecedent comes after if. So the antecedent is the book is due today. Now, what's the consequent? I want you to say it out loud right now. What is the consequent? It must be returned to the library. That's the consequent. All right, now I want you to ignore the conclusion. Do not look at that conclusion. It will confuse you, okay? So therefore, it is not due today. Just put your hand over that, all right? So now the question is, what is that second premise doing? The book need not be returned to the library. What is that doing? It looks like it's denying it must be returned to the library, right? It must be returned to the library versus the book need not be returned. Okay, the book need not be returned. That's denying that it must be returned. So we have a case of denying the consequent. All right, and so this kind of breaks that down into detail. You can pause here and just review that and try to understand that that's just going through what I just said right now. And so the answer to this is modus tollens. Why? Because it's DC, denying the consequent. All right, so that's the end. And yeah, what I just want to recommend to you is that I want you to try to practice constructing arguments that have the modus ponens or modus tollens pattern, and you'll probably get better at identifying them after you construct them. So here at the end, I just give, again, this is just the procedure for modus ponens style arguments. You want to create some modus ponens style arguments, follow this step-by-step procedure, and it might help you in turn identify when an argument is modus ponens or modus tollens. All right, take care.